Okay, everybody, it's 7 o'clock. So I'd like to wish you all a good evening and welcome to the Licensing and Public Protection Committee meeting being held today, Wednesday, the 10th of May, 2023. Please note that this meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and recorded for publication at a later date. May I ask members, in order to avoid any confusion, that if they wish a vote to be held on any of the items this evening, can they make me aware of this at the appropriate time? Thank you. Could I also ask that if members wish to speak, that they raise their hand and speak into the microphone when asked to do so? Thank you. We come to the agenda then. Part one is licensing. Number one on the agenda is apologies. I've received apologies from Councillor Craig Skelding and Councillor Simon White, and Councillor David Hutchinson is substituting for Councillor Skelding. Are there any more apologies? Nope. Okay, we'll move to item 2, declarations of interest in relation to licensing matters. Do any members have any declarations of interest? Nope. Okay, moving on to item 3. It is the minutes of the previous meeting. The minutes of the previous meeting can be found on pages 5 to 6 of your agenda pack. Are members content that those can be taken as read? Yes, everyone's happy. Item 4 is the first substantial item of business this evening, which is the Licensing Act 2003 Regularity Easements Consultation. This report can be found on pages 7 to 32 of your pack. I'll now hand over to our officer, Matt Burton, who will present this report to us.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. This is the first report of a few from me. So this is to inform you of a Home Office consultation as to whether the temporary alcohol licensing provisions that were enacted over the COVID period should be made permanent or not. It's only for members to note the content of the report. We've already submitted the consultation response. Unfortunately, the closing date for the consultation was before the date of this committee. So we sought advice and a position from the chair and portfolio holder on the matters contained within the consultation. This committee has received several reports in the past in relation to the easements provided for by the Business and Planning Act 2020 through the COVID period, primarily around the pavement licensing regime, changes that related to off sales of alcohol and extensions to limits for temporary event notices. Those easements have been extended several times and they're currently due to expire on the 30th of September 2023, and there are elements within the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, particularly in relation to the pavement licensing regime, to make that a permanent feature. The Home Office have, as I said, had a consultation which is now closed. It ran for a period of 8 weeks, closed on the 1st of May. And I just wanted to run through quickly what the purpose of the consultation was and the response that we've sent off. So firstly, they were consulting upon whether the off-sales easement, which allowed for premises that sell alcohol for consumption on the premises, could then automatically sell it for off-consumption. And currently the Licensing Act provides that you've got to choose one or the other or both. But what the easement did was just allow everyone to be able to benefit from allowing takeaway alcohol and things like that. So they were asking whether it should continue past the 30th of September. So their option was do nothing, which would then have just reverted back to what was the current position. Make it permanent, so that any alcohol license application and any current premises would then benefit from the current easements. And then there was an option in relation to premises licenses that have pavement licenses as well, whether or not an alcohol premises license should automatically cover a pavement license. The second part of that related to temporary events notices, and again there was 3 options set out. They had extended the number of temporary event notices in terms of days and events you could submit over the past 2 years. They were consulting on whether we do nothing, in which case it goes back to the original limits. We extend the easement for a further 12 months, but then revert back to the original limits, or to make it permanent, the changes, so therefore increase the limits permanently. I don't propose to go through every single question with you, but the general response from the council has been this. In relation to the off sales, we think it's been a success. We think it's really helped businesses. We do think that there still needs to be some oversight in relation to the premises that do that. Under the easements, there was a notification procedure where the premises would tell us that that's what they were doing. We still think that there needs to be some sort of either notification procedure or application to allow for that. But generally, we're not against more premises being allowed to sell alcohol for consumption off the sale, for consumption off the premises, I should say. In relation specifically to the question as to whether a premises license should automatically cover a pavement license area, our view was that no, it shouldn't. There's still no impediment to people having a pavement license and a premises license, but the two regimes have different conditions. They have slightly different aims, and we foresaw that there could be some potential problems if there was just an automatic inclusion into the premises license area. So conditions may not be fit for purpose. They may sit within a public space protection order, which then conflicts with a premises license. So our view was that whilst a premises can still have both licenses, they shouldn't overlap, essentially. In relation to the temporary event notices, we've had no issues in relation to there being extra events or the facility for extra events. So we supported that, and we continue to support that. We don't believe it should be extended any further, because temporary event notices are meant to be light touch and for one-offs. And if you have too many of those, then it begs the question, why don't they have a premises license? So that was the response that we sent through to the Home Office back in April. As I said, the proposal is just for members to note the contents. If there are any questions, happy to answer them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matt. Do any members have any questions for Matt? Just Councillor Whelan then, please.
Matt, it's more an observation than a question. I think the two can run together. I think it depends on the geographical siting as to the impact it has. So having special permission to do both, especially the pavement one, I think is important. And the communication of what they've actually got is important as well, in case it involves any problems. The police have to be called, that sort of thing. They don't make a silly mistake by causing something to be investigated that actually they've got permission for. Just an observation.
Yes, and a very valid one. There are provisions in the easements that were put forward originally that we're currently working on, in that the pavement license needs to be adjacent to the premises to which it relates. So they can't have one that's 100 yards away. It has to be where they can see it, where they can have control of it. This consultation isn't to suggest that one should take sort of precedence over another. They have been quite clear that there are two separate regimes, and because we don't know the outcome of the pavement license potential changes in the levelling up bill, I don't think they've been perhaps brave enough to suggest that a premises license should be the one and only thing they might need if they want to work on a pavement. But yes, you're quite right. The police always have a copy of the premises license. It's in the legislation to get one. It's also in the legislation that they get a copy of a pavement license. Pavement license should also always be stuck in the window of the premises as well. So if there are ever any questions as to whether that they're within their curtilage or what permissions they've got or what timing they've got, it should be literally in their face. So there shouldn't be any concerns as to which one overrules or.
Oh, it's gone strange. I think it's a very good idea. And I think the fact that it helps local businesses so much when they've been in some very difficult situations with the COVID restrictions, I think anything that helps them subsequently helps the town and is a good thing.
Yep, I absolutely agree. As members will be aware, we don't charge a fee for pavement licenses at the moment. There'll be an opportunity to review that when the levelling up bill gets enacted in whatever form it does. But yeah, it's definitely been a lifeline to a lot of premises, and we've supported it as much as we've been able to.
Any other comments? Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's rather a lot of paperwork down there to digest. But really coming to my main point is I think we have up the town centre establishments to keep the trade. And if we suggesting we go back to status quo, will that affect how many of the premises in the town centre? Will that affect? Well, it would be easier for them to apply for pavement sitting or drinking on the pavements.
So in relation to this consultation, it makes no difference at all in relation to whether premises can apply for one or have one granted. The question was whether or not a premises license that would normally cover the building itself could be extended automatically, so the conditions and the timings and everything would then reflect upon the pavement license. The provisions in the bill don't seek to detract from getting a pavement license. What they do is they slightly extend the consultation period and the determination period, because they are quite short at the minute, and quite rightly so. Through the pandemic, it was to enable people to get those facilities in place as soon as possible. What a number of authorities have found is that actually they needed a bit more time, because it was only 5 working days consultation, 5 working days to make a determination and issue a license. That's actually not a very long time. So they are seeking to extend that, but still not excessively. What they're proposing is that it's a permanent regime rather than it just be temporary, and it curtailed in September. So again, we're fully in support of that going ahead. And it's not just for town centres. Obviously, it's a national easement, and whatever happens will be a national decision based on the bill.
Any further comments from anybody? Councillor Sweeney.
I obviously completely support this. I think anything that makes it easier for people to spend money in the town centre is to be encouraged. Obviously, got to be a certain degree of control over it, because we want a free for all. But I think I said last time this was raised on the iron market on a sunny summer's day, and people outside and with a beer, a glass of wine, or something to eat. That looks absolutely delightful. And anything we can do to encourage that and to that stay for people to stay in our town centre and to enjoy our town centre, what it's for, I absolutely totally agree with it. I think it's an excellent idea. Thank you.
Moves then to the recommendations of this. Are members happy to contend the contents of the report and the consultation response? Go ahead. I think that's carried. Oh, yeah, yes, it will be. Yes, it will be.
Back to the committee, won't it? Yeah.
We'll move on to item 5, which is the minutes of the licensing subcommittee meetings. These minutes can be found on pages 33 to 34 of your pack. Are members content that those can be taken as read? Okay, that's agreed. There are no further licensing matters, so we'll now move to the Public Protection Committee. So item 6 is declarations of interest in relation to public protection matters. Do any members have any declarations of interest? No. Item 7 is taxis and private hire vehicles, Safeguarding and Road Safety Act 2022. This report is found on pages 35 to 38 of your agenda. I'll pass back over to Matt, who will present this to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this committee had a report back in on the 28th of June 2022 in relation to this new piece of legislation that was coming out off the back of a private member's bill. And it's got the snappy title that you see there, Taxi and Private Hire Vehicles Safeguarding Road Safety Act 2022. Purpose of this report is to, again, just to note for members that there were some existing provisions that hadn't been enacted at that time from that act, and they related to a central national database which records all taxi driver refusals, revocations and suspensions. You'll be aware from previous reports there was a voluntary database which recorded revocations and refusals but not suspensions, which the council was signed up to, as were a great many other authorities throughout the country. But what the legislation did was they made it mandatory. So every single licensing authority now has to sign up. So the purpose of this report is just to tell members really that the provisions in relation to the database came into force on the 27th of April of this year. What that now means is that local authorities have to provide any previous decisions over a course of time that are either a refusal, a revocation or suspension. For this authority, we already had all of our revocations and refusals on there. We've since sent the suspensions. They will be on there in due course once the database controller puts it on there. So for all intents and purposes, we've done everything we need to. We are up to date. What happens then is if the council make a decision to refuse or to revoke or to suspend any taxi driver for a matter that relates wholly or partly to either safeguarding the public or to road safety, we must add it to the register. It also provides that when we receive an application for a taxi driver, whether it's a new or renewal, we must carry out a check on this database to see if the person has been refused or revoked or suspended elsewhere. And if that is the case, we are then duty bound to make a request to that authority to find out what it was and why. And we can then take that into consideration when we're taking a determination as to whether to license or relicense that individual. If you want any further information, I'm happy to give it. It's the National Anti-Fraud Network who've been designated as the central control of the database. They're the people that had the voluntary database. It's just been built on and expanded. So the Department for Transport have nominated them as their central database. That's what we're using. We've been using it since for approximately 12 months. The data stays on there for a certain period of time. We do also have a duty to update it if anything changes, such as when a suspension ends, perhaps. So if it's a 2-week suspension, we'll put that on at the time. But if it's open-ended, depending on someone carrying out an activity or a training course or something like that, once they've completed that, we then have to go onto the database to then put a finish date on. So it's kept up to date. So just remember to note the contents and that the database is now sort of up and running, provisions are live. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Do any members wish to speak? Councillor Brown.
This is really welcome. It's very good as well, safeguarding armoury tonight. I just have a query around the length of time that the data is retained for. On page 36, 11 years, which is quite an odd number of years. Could you explain that to us, Matthew?
It was 11 years on the voluntary database. That is usually in line with certain data retention policies. That's what the National Anti-Fraud Network had for their policy when the voluntary database was created. And I believe that's where it's come from in the legislation, but it's specifically provided for within the Taxi and Private Hire Road Safety Act now.
Thank you for clarifying that one.
Council report.
I'd like to agree with Councillor Brown. I think it's an amazing piece of legislation. As well, I sat on this committee several years ago, and a lot of officers' time and councillors' time is spent with licensing appeals from people who'd moved from different areas or lived in different areas, and we're getting licenses in Newcastle. I think it's fantastic for public safeguarding.
Things is that the people who are using the database and actually doing the searches have it as part of their, I don't know, training, induction or whatever it is, and it's an automatic response that's the first port of call. We have had people coming on appeal and various things where we haven't known that they've actually had marks against them, is the way that I would put it. And it's taken a while for it to filter through. And you're then making decisions blind because you don't actually know how many misdemeanors, how many offences they've committed. So it's that quick response and what the turnaround is that I think is important.
Yes, absolutely. Part of the issues that we've had previously was because it was a voluntary database and not every local authority was signed up to it. Some local authorities were making checks on it but didn't add their data on, which was near to useless. That's obviously not the case now. All local authorities should have their old data on there. All local authorities should be using it to check. And what I think is a really good feature of the database is that it will show you not only if they've been refused, revoked or suspended, but it will show you if someone else has searched to see whether they've been refused, revoked or suspended. And what that means is they've applied for a license at that local authority, because that local authority will have searched the database to find out if there have been any previous misdemeanors. So it's actually a really powerful tool for us. And going forward, now it's mandatory. There shouldn't be anyone that sort of falls between the cracks. And historically, another reason for that was, even though we require applicants to disclose on their application form whether they have any licenses elsewhere, whether they've ever had any revoked or refused or suspended, on some occasions we've not had the whole truth perhaps disclosed on an application form. And there have been instances where, as you said, we've not been able to take the full picture into account because we've not known the full picture. This piece of legislation, which the local authorities have been asking for years, is now there. So it really does tighten the grip and provide that information that we need to make these informed decisions on these applications.
Just to comment, I worked for several years, just over a decade, in Wolverhampton, where there weren't the standard names that we would know as a first name and a second name. And there were lots of different ethnic groups who have multiple names and sometimes change their names. And you can't go wrong with a photograph plus a name, even if you've got all the multiple names. Are there any safeguards that would provide for that, where a photograph is attached to a name and you actually get all the variations? We had students who were just submitting essays at the university and whatever name suited them at the time.
Yes, certainly in respect to the database, it's quite good. It doesn't have photos and it doesn't tell you the reasons for the decision. You have to go to the other local authority once you've found that information to get it under a data protection request, which is quite normal. We've been doing it for years outside of the legislation, but it allows us to do this. In terms of the database itself, it consists of a lot of information. So it has first names, middle names, surnames. It also has also known aliases. It has their driving license number, their national insurance number, their date of birth, and several other sort of government identifiers. And when you put that all into search, it searches on each individual line. So even if it's only a partial match, so if someone's got a slightly different name, but they've got their national insurance number, it will always pick up that that person has been has had a decision taken against them or a search made against them in the past. And when another aspect of keeping up to date is if we become aware that a driver of ours has changed their name, we can go back into the system and then update it to say also known as. Yes. So the duty to update doesn't just relate to when a decision may have changed or ended. It also any other aspect, if we become aware that either we've done something wrong in terms of inputting data, or a name has changed, or sometimes we can put the address in, we can change an address or put a second address against that person. So there's all these sort of permutations that we can do. As I say, we don't get the photo, but once we've located there's a check on an individual, we then speak to that local authority and say, what's the decision? Why did you do this? And then we can ask for copies of committee reports, picture of their driver's license and stuff, so we can check it's the same person.
What's the time lapse on that checking?
When we make the check on the system, the check's instantaneous.
Instant.
Yes. So
this is as foolproof as you can get it. It's brilliant.
Pretty much without actually having that person's photo and the reasons for that decision on the database, which they felt, I think quite correctly, would be breaching data protection. There is no better way we can deal with this, I don't think. There are other aspects of taxi licensing which could benefit from databases and certain things, but that's another story. But for this, we see this as a really hugely positive change.
Comments from members? No? Okay. Are members happy to approve as a recommendation in this report and note the contents? Okay, that's clearly carried. Okay, we move on to item 8, which is the update on results of taxi licensing appeals. This report can be found on pages 39 to 42 of your pack. I hand back over to Matt, who will present this report to you.
Thank you, Chair. Last one from me tonight. You'll know from each committee, we try to give an update as to the appeals that have been going on and the results to show how the courts have found the decisions taken by the council and the sort of the outcomes of them. So I won't dwell on any in particular, but I will. Obviously, I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has them on sort of specifics. So in relation to the first magistrate's appeal, and there's 4 that have had some aspect heard in court. The first one, which is resulting way back from July 2020 to refuse to renew a taxi driver license for a variety of reasons. It's been delayed because of COVID. It's been adjourned several times. It's now been adjourned for 6th time. Some of those were unforeseeable, but the last 4 times of those have been because it's got to court and they haven't had time to deal with it because there are other matters that take precedence. In the report, it says at the time of writing, we're waiting for a new court date. I have that now. It's the 8th of December. So that just gives an idea as to how long we're having to wait for certain appeals and matters to be heard. So I don't have an update for that one, but of course, when we get to the January or February meeting next year, I'll hopefully have one for you. The second matter that's gone to the magistrates was a subcommittee decision, and that was to grant a taxi driver license. However, they'd requested not to do the taxi knowledge test. Members had determined that they did need to do the knowledge test, and they appealed on that basis. It was going to be heard in February. We all attended. They said they needed an interpreter, and I'd advised them that they needed to go through the court to get an interpreter. They didn't heed that advice. So we all turned up and the court said, no, we can't hear it because you need an interpreter. They did warn that they're now going to be liable for the cost of that hearing for everyone turning up. And it's been relisted for later on in the month. So again, at the next committee meeting, I'll hopefully be able to give you an update on that one. The third matter was again a subcommittee decision, which was to revoke a taxi driver license following a driving without insurance offence. Magistrates heard that, dismissed it very quickly, and awarded us our full cost that we'd requested of just under £1,700. And the final one that went to magistrates, or didn't go to magistrates, it was due to be heard in January. They'd only recently had legal instruction. It was set for, so it was adjourned. It's been adjourned to August. It's subsequently now been adjourned since then to the 8th of December. That final one is actually at the council request because I'm not actually present on the date they set it for. So that's not their fault on this occasion. In relation to the Crown Court cases, which we have had a few of, the first and second actually relate to the same person for similar matters around council decisions, committee decisions to refuse to grant hackney carriage licenses. The judge heard the case in March, dismissed both appeals, and again awarded full cost to the council, £1,800. That was a very good result. The third matter, which was due to go to Crown Court following an onward appeal from the magistrates, they have subsequently withdrawn their appeal, and they now owe us £2,000 in full cost, which was awarded at Magistrates Court. And the final one, again, was due to go to Crown Court in December originally. they very last minute decided to withdraw their appeal. Because we'd already instructed council to deal with that, we'd incurred some costs. So we had some mediation and discussion between both parties, and they agreed to pay for those costs, and then a little bit extra on top of the costs that were awarded at the magistrates court. So again, we've now been awarded £1,230. Just in relation to paragraph 2.8 of the report, it outlines how many appeals we still have ongoing, 9 in the magistrates court, which is still right. And it also says 3 appeals in the Crown Court. I'll give you a verbal update on that, and I'll obviously put in writing for the next report. All 3 of those appeals have been withdrawn. Upon us serving additional information on them and requesting further information, they've all decided to withdraw their appeals. So what that means is one has been withdrawn, and we are now owed £1,000 in costs, which was partial costs that we requested at magistrates. And the other 2, which relate to the same individual, he now owes us £2,422 in total costs. So very good results again. The pressure seems to have paid off. And whilst we still have quite a large number outstanding, we seem to be doing quite well. So the proposal is just for members to note the contents of the report. And again, if there are any questions about either specifics or how the appeal process works, then happy to answer them. Thank you.
That's a good set of results there. Agreed with you. Do members wish to come in on this and have any comments? Councillor Whelan?
I don't know, but what provision is there for tracking, recouping the actual costs, especially things where you've had wasted costs orders and things like that? Is there a process for tracking it? Because sometimes I'm aware, and when I've been in court, you know, costs are awarded and we'll give you £1 a week and that sort of thing. Do we have a process for tracking all this?
We do. For taxi appeals, because they're administrative rather than any other, the costs are actually inter-party, which means we then have to effectively invoice them for the money. The court doesn't get involved. So we pass the results on to our legal team and finance team. They issue an invoice to the individual. If they don't agree or request a payment plan, which we do agree to, because quite a lot of these are substantial pieces of money, but we're not looking at £1 a week. We're looking at £100, £150 a month. I appreciate, but just for the purposes, we try to recoup all of our costs, whatever they are, within a 12-month period at most. Sooner, obviously, if we can do, but it's passed through to our finance team and their recovery processes for sending reminders and keeping on top of that. So it's dealt with by a separate department, but we do make sure all the invoices are out there as soon as possible and recovery is taking place.
So they're the ones that hit the bailiffs and the sheriffs to recoup the money if they have to take possession of the car, etc. You know, that happens.
I don't know, but it's their responsibility in terms of how recovery is dealt with across the council. I don't know the ins and outs of whether or not they do send bailiffs and recover goods and belongings. To be honest, the ones that I'm aware of have paid. These ones in here are only recent, so they're ongoing. But certainly in the past, when we've done that, as far as I'm aware, they've paid up.
Councillor Sweeney.
Congratulate this committee on these results, because people appeal it, they take it to court, and the court rules in our favour. So I'd like to congratulate the people on the decisions they're making, and also congratulate the officers on bringing them to this committee to make these very sensible decisions. And I'm reading through this, it seems we're sort of 100% success rate. So I think we can all pat ourselves on the back for a good job well done. And thank you, Matt.
Councillor John Williams.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Sweeney's really still my thunder, but I'll go on to say that what we're about is making it safe for passengers to travel in the taxis. We're not about people to count. It's a professional job. And in my view, the taxi service or a public service did really well in this area, and the prices are quite good. But again, it's the safety of the paramount, that the passengers are kept safe, picked up, dropped off courteously, and without any due stress. So yeah, I go along with Councillor Sweeney, congratulate the officers and member. I'm not going to congratulate myself, but the members of the committee's decisions we made that are stand up in court. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Yes, I also would like to echo what my three colleagues have also already said. I think that the officers involved have done very well in regarding what they've achieved, and long may it continue. Do any other members wish to say anything? Matt, would you like to come back in?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I was just going to say thank you for your kind words. Yeah, if there's anything else. No, I can just say that myself and the team are immensely proud of how we deal with these matters and the results that we get. So it supports the work that the members do and the decisions that they take. But we're very happy with the results that we've had. It is a 100% success rate for quite a long period of time now. So yes, so again, whoever said it, long may it continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. So I take it that all members are happy to approve the contents of this report, and we will swiftly move on to item 9, which is the Public Space Protection Order, Public Consultation Update. This report can be found on pages 43 to 62. I'm going to hand over to our officer, Michelle, who is joining us remotely this evening from the comfort of her own home, who will present this report to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just checking that everyone can hear me okay. I think I can see nods there, so I'll take that as a yes.
Very loud. You're very
right.
loud.
Oh, okay, I'll try and speak quieter then. Okay, so this first report that we are going to discuss tonight is in regards to the Public Space Protection Order in relation to gating. So members may recall at the previous public protection meeting we had, this was where I first raised the proposals around the public rights of way, which we were looking to either that were already gated off, or we were looking to gate off. So the purpose of this report this evening is to provide an update on the recent public consultation on the proposed partial and full closure of the public rights of way in Newcastle. It's just for members to note that there are no proposed changes following the 6-week consultation that was conducted, and ultimately to gain support for the committee to conduct a final 6-week public consultation in regards to these proposals. So just to remind members of the reasons for this report, the reason that we are looking to obtain a public space protection order is following ongoing reports of antisocial behaviour in these locations. So the Borough Council is seeking to use its powers to impose prohibitions to restrict antisocial behaviour and arson in the locality through restricting and partially restricting public rights of way. And the committee is required to consider agreeing to the conditions of the order so that a formal consultation can be initiated. So we have concluded the first 6-week consultation in regards to that, and members will be able to find the full results of that public consultation in Appendix 5 to this report. Just to give a brief overview of the public consultation. So on the whole, 32 responses were received as part of the 6-week consultation, and this concluded on the 27th of March. Overall, there was a relatively positive response to the proposals, and I'll briefly go through them. So in regards to Kisgrove 19, which some of you may recall is in regards to a public right-of-way located in the New Chapel area, 75% were in favour of this location being partially closed between 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. daily. And just a reminder for members that this public right-of-way has been partially closed at this location for an excess of 10 years already. So the fact that 75% was still in favour of this location being partially closed is evidence, obviously, that proposal is working well. The next public right-of-way was Newcastle-under-Lyme. So this is in regards to a public right-of-way that runs to the rear of BT Avenue and Honeywood in the Crossheath area. On the whole, 57% were in favour of this location being gated permanently, and 57% also supported the public right of the way being redirected to regain access to Newcastle-under-Lyme. Now, members will recall that this is a new proposal that we were looking to gate a public right of way on a permanent basis, and this is on the basis of several arson attacks in this area. We have seen trends in regards to arson in this particular location, which is why we have a demand from public members of the public in regards to this gated area. The next one is Newcastle-143. This public right of way is located in Maybank. 75% were in support of this public right of way being gated permanently. Again, for members to note that this public right of way has actually been gated for some time already, and so obviously 75% being in support of this is evidence that that particular public right of way being gated is actually working well. So for a full copy of the consultation results can be found on Appendix 5 to this report. So what we're looking for from members today is that following the 6-week consultation, there are no further amendments that we're proposing following the results of that consultation, and we are now looking for members to confirm that we are able to undertake a final 6-week public consultation for the proposed PSPO for these particular locations. Happy to take any questions.
Before we go any further, may I ask IT, is there a possibility you can turn the sound down from Michelle's end, if possible? It's not bellowing to you guys. Is everybody happy with the sound? No issues. Okay, we'll leave it as it is. Just put up and varied. Any questions from members? I'll bring Councillor Heatham in first, followed by Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I support recommendations. I think anything that can assist the council to deal with antisocial behaviour is to be welcomed. So I'd just reiterate that I would support this.
Thank you. Councillor Jill Williams. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I fully support the Crossheath one and the other gated areas. But can I ask just one thing? These areas are not forgotten about, because we tend to see these gated off and then there's never any maintenance. People who live behind them dump the rubbish, and that's what's going on. I could see that in Crossheath, because some of the fences are all broken down already, and the edges are not what, you know, a proper fencing. So can we ask if they are maintained and make sure tenants don't have the rubbish put into the gated areas?
I think that's a valid point. Michelle, can we ask that question of you?
Yes, absolutely. And just to note for members that a public space protection order is to be reviewed every 3 years. So the order is only valid for a 3-year period. We will look to review and look at this process again in the next 3 years. And it may be that obviously the problem may have resolved itself by then, and members may not feel that we need that particular public right of way gated at that moment in time. So it's not a proposal for this to be gated for the foreseeable future. It will be reviewed in the next 3 years.
3 years' time, there can be an awful lot of rubbish. We should be looking at them at least every 6 to 12 months.
Yes, absolutely. Any fly tipping or any issues in regards to duty of care from householders will be looked at like it is with any location in the borough.
Ourselves as elected members of our particular wards, it may be an idea for us to also help keep an eye on it and then pass on the relevant information to you, Michelle, or street scene. I think there is a valid point raised there. Any other members wish to come in? Councillor John Williams.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I mean, closing the right of way is not to be taken lightly. Just bear with me. When this estate was built, 89, councillors then, I was one of them, insisted that lighting we put along the right of way, tarmac, and it was well used. but we come on 24, 25 years later with more antisocial behaviour and less police to monitor that and do as they do. I mean, they do a fantastic job, the police, but there isn't that many of them about these days. So we're down to this closing a public right of way. It's not only just public right of way traditionally, but also it's on the cycle route from Maybank or Stanton down this public right of way down into Newcastle. A lot of cyclists use it in the daytime. So I spoke to some of the residents there and they agree with what the officer said, that really should be gated, and it's not going to be permanent, but it's going to be gated and see how we go, and hopefully in a few years' time things might change and we'll be able to open it up again. But where it's signposts, some of the signposts will be directing cyclists and walkers down this closed off area. So really those signposts should be turned round or altered. So it gives people to divert them down Honeywood, the road called Honeywood, down and take you down to the Ekipecky Park. Now, when you dog legs around the Ekipecky Park, you see on the map, the trees are overgrown. And these are not residence trees, they're Borough Council trees. They're responsible. They overhang the park. I noticed they have had the sweeper down there and cleaned the leaves off. But I did mention at the last meeting about the overhanging trees. Dark, you know, not about probably summertime, but again, these overhanging trees will make it a dark area and dangerous area for people to walk. And we were talking here today to make them safer, areas safer. So could I ask again, have you been in touch with the street scene to get these trees cut back on a regular basis? Because we know trees grow and the bushes, they were set there as bushes, but they've overgrown, the what do you call them, self-seeders. And really, as it's a dark area, if Michelle understands where I'm talking about, at the end, as you go into the Ekipecky, or you can go dogleg around, there's a light there, a street light at the end of this public right of way that does shine on the footpath. But again, the trees stop the light penetrating the footway. So coming on to 2 points, look at the signposting, so people will be able to be coming down, cycling from Maybank and walking, and also the trees cut back on the Borough Council land. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you for that question. So in regards to the sign, that is something we are looking at in regards to redirecting. Obviously, once we have the order in place, signs we put up in order to redirect people back onto the Newcastle 132. In regards to the trees, I have been in discussion with Darren Green in regards to the trees in this location. This is on their list in regards to their annual maintenance around trees. Obviously, trees are pruned seasonally, and it is something we're in discussion about to schedule that in the next season when they will be undertaking tree maintenance.
The chairman's already said as councillors will monitor these paths and make sure they're kept in good order. So watch the space. Thank you.
I want to follow on from Councillor Williams on regards to Newcastle 143. Which that has been shut for a number of years, and it's also quite overgrown, I'm led to believe. Will what Councillor Williams has requested regarding the BT Avenue one, will that apply to the other two that have been mentioned in this report?
Yes, absolutely. So we have been in discussion again with Street Scene in regards to doing some maintenance around there. Some of the overgrown vegetation is from neighbouring properties, so there's a bit of work to do around there, around making property owners, private landlords, private property owners, schools responsible for maintaining their shrubbery from their side and ensuring that that particular public right of way is clear.
Councillor Wheeldon.
Just a question, when somewhere's closed off, and I think in the instance that I've read about, it's very important that they are, especially when sheds and places like that were being set on fire. potentially could have kids in there who is sort of summer camping themselves out. So I do agree with the fencing off. Is it possible, and I don't know how wide these areas are, to have a street sweeper go down there periodically to actually clean them? If an area is closed off, it is very tempting for residents to just sling things over the side thinking it doesn't matter, nobody's going down there. And then you have a further hazard that's been created by a prevention action.
Yes, so we work very closely with Aspire Housing. Obviously, a lot of the properties in regards to Beatty Avenue specifically are properties owned by Aspire Housing. So we're doing a joint venture with them at the moment and exploring utilising their caretaking service and linking them in with our street scene teams in areas such like this, where obviously we may encounter a problem and trying to prevent that from happening and moving forward.
Do any other members wish to raise any questions or points? Okay, so we'll now move on to the recommendations. And does this committee consider that are they happy to consider the contents of this report and give approval to the officers to conduct a final 6-week public consultation? Yes, okay, that's all agreed and happy. Thank you. Moving on to item 10 then, which is public space protection orders, parks and open spaces. The contents of this report are found on page 63 to 76 of your agenda. I'll hand back to Michelle, who will present this report to us.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report today is to advise members of options and to seek permission to consult residents on a revised public space protection order for parks and open spaces. And this is in relation to dog control and antisocial behaviour. So what we're looking for today is for members, asking members to approve a consultation to be started on the proposed public space protection order. And that's detailed in Appendix A to this report. The reason for this report being brought forward, the order is currently drafted to be as flexible as possible, and it enables a local authority to effectively target enforcement. The proposed controls are considered suitable for the current needs and for up to 3 years when they must be reviewed again, as I've previously mentioned. So a bit of background in regards to this particular application. So since November 2017, a number of dog control orders have been enforced, and these apply to a variety of locations in the borough. These were reviewed back in 2020, and the current orders that are in place are due to expire in November 2023. So we're now looking to review those that are currently in place. We're also using this review as an opportunity to scope and develop the public space protection order to cover a number of community safety and antisocial behaviour related controls, as these are often specific to our parks and open spaces. Alcohol prohibition zones have previously been introduced in parks and open spaces to help reduce antisocial behaviour. However, with a change in legislation back in 2014, we no longer have any alcohol prohibition zones in our parks and open spaces. Therefore, the drafted public space protection order, as shown in Appendix A, hopes to include controls for behaviours that are problematic for our parks and open spaces and assist with ensuring that these spaces are used in the correct manner. So some statistics to support this application around antisocial behaviour specifically. We have 71 reports of alcohol-related ASB for parks and open spaces in the last 12 months. We also have 242 reports relating to youth and intoxicating substances and 38 incidents in relation to other issues in parks and open spaces. And these are direct reports made to Staffordshire Police. So the council can make a public space protection order on any public space within its own area, but before doing so, it must consult with local police. The council must also consult community representatives it thinks is appropriate, and any specific groups such as residents associations and individuals. And before making a PSPO, the council also has to publish the draft order in accordance with regulations made by the Secretary of State. So if a PSPO is adopted, it can operate for a maximum of 3 years, and it can be refreshed for a further period, but only after a review and a consultation exercise confirms that there remains an actual need for that control to be in place. There are a number of issues that need to be considered as part of this report. So firstly, the authority is obliged to make a proportionate and reasonable use of the powers, and this should be reflected if there is a need to introduce a control. Our current evidence is, although that is a generally high level of compliance with present controls, dog-related complaints still present a considerable caseload for the authority, with 362 complaints being passed on to the council's dog wardens and 78 relating to dog fouling, and that's in the last 12 months. In addition to this, Street Scene have also had 84 reports in regards to the removal of dog fouling. We also know that there are ongoing concerns around antisocial behaviour in the parks and open spaces. This includes things around graffiti, underage drinking, and other types of behaviours which are likely to cause alarm, harassment and distress to users of the park. The proposed consultation will help to clarify to the residents what they believe to be an issue and what needs to be addressed. Some financial and resources considerations that members need to be aware of. So in regards to a public space protection order, permanent signage costing is dependent upon what controls are actually adopted and where they would be applied. Signage must obviously contain the date of the order, then when that becomes effective, and would have a maximum life of 3 years. A report is going to be drafted and costed in regards to signage, and this will be produced for CLT and members in a future report, because the level of signage required will depend on the public support for the proposals. So the residents' expectations in regards to this: whenever any form of dog-related control is considered, the local authority does receive quite considerable feedback from its residents, as well as animal welfare charities, and the needs to balance the needs of dog-owning residents with the expectations of the broader community. So as part of this review, the PSPO will also cover some community safety elements, again, taking into consideration complaints received from members of the public. The proposal for this PSPO, so members are asked to approve consultation to be started on a public space protection order for the parks as proposed in Appendix A. If approval is given, members will then be requested to consider an updated proposal, taking into account representations that have been made through the consultation process, and that will be around in summer 2023, with a view to new controls becoming fully operational from November 2023. The proposals, which are currently drafted, best match current drug controls and will benefit from additional controls in relation to community safety. Additional elements within the proposals in respect of maximum number of dogs in specific locations and the requirement to carry a bag reflects complaints and pressures from residents across the borough. Moving further through, so there are a number of alternative options that can be considered by members. The first one is to take no action. So that would allow the current dog control orders to cease in October 2023 and not be replaced. You could remove all current dog restrictions and cease all dog-related enforcement activity. You could also remove controls. Removing the controls would eliminate the need for investigation and enforcement with potential savings. However, removing the risk of enforcement may also result in some standards of public places being reducing. It could also increase conflict between dog owners and those not owning a dog, and potentially require more cleanup and resources. Another alternative is in regards to the proposed controls being amended prior to the consultation. So members may wish to change the proposed scope for the controls. For example, you may choose to omit specific controls, such as the requirement to carry bags, or limit the number of dogs which can be walked in specific areas. Members may also want to include other controls that to take into consideration that are not currently in the scope for this order, and these controls would need to be proportionate to the location and be based on evidential need for these controls to be put in place. Finally, members may wish to consider if the types of locations where the controls apply should be amended. Members are reminded that they can make representations in respect of specific locations in their ward, and if approval is gained, to further consult. Members will have a further opportunity to amend proposals on receipt of the second report in summer 2023. So I've already spoke about the signage implications and a report that will be drafted following the public consultation in regards to this specific order. It's also for members to be aware of some major risks. So there is a risk of legal challenge if the authority does not follow the correct process. And whilst the majority of residents are likely to support pragmatic and practical controls, there is a risk that some may choose to disregard good controls if they feel they're unfair. So what we're looking for today is for approval from the members in order for us to initiate a 6-week public consultation in regards to the proposed order, which is in Appendix A, and then a further report will be brought back to Public Protection Committee in the summer so that members are able to comment on those results.
I'll open this up to members. Do any members wish to comment, question? Councillor Jill Williams first, please.
My particular problem is maximum of 6 dogs. Talked about this ever since we brought it in. There is no way anyone can control 6 very large dogs, even if they are on leads, and they let them off. It's not up to us to tell people how many dogs they can have, but we should be able to say you cannot walk 6 dogs on public land. They can't possibly clean up after 6 dogs. I don't care what anybody says. And the whole purpose of taking the dog out is to do its toilet and exercise it, isn't it? So they're never stuck on a lead. They're always let off. And there's no way anyone can control 6 dogs. I will admit I've been talking about this for a few years and probably have never got any further forward, but it's time we did. People have large, dangerous dogs now. The incident in Kidsgrove proves it. Well, the 2 dogs actually nearly killed another dog, didn't they? Because there was nobody around or no particular law there to say that they shouldn't have those dogs loose. So I'm hoping this time we can have a little bit of common sense and cut down how many dogs you can actually take out on a walk. And it's dog fouling. We've got on the whammy, we've just leased out a very large for the children of the area to a football team, haven't we? So they can use it. We're going to put a pavilion on there. It's got an open actual football pitch, and it's an exercise area for take your dogs on at the same time by the public. So we defeat the object, don't we? We put something in really fantastic for an area, but allow people to go on it with dogs. So probably that's where we should be looking at our exclusion zones. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Michelle, would you want to come back on that?
Yeah, so in regards to the maximum of 6 dogs, and I know this has obviously been a contentious issue that's been raised when the orders were previously reviewed. It is probably one of the most contested points, I think, in regards to the public consultation that we're looking to put forward. I would presume that we will get a lot of comments in regards to this. Now, we have the opportunity to look at that and review that. Members also have the opportunities to voice their concerns around that specific condition. The current proposals are based on what is currently in place, so not a lot has changed in regards to that. The current rule is around the maximum of 6 dogs. Moving forward, following the public consultation, there is an opportunity for that to be looked at if it needs to be looked at.
Wielding.
Yeah, I've got a dog, and we've also used a dog walker from time to time who has taken in Cheshire up to 8 dogs out to walk. Didn't have any problems, but could have, and I do take your point. I've been savaged by a Seoul's sausage dog. It's not just big dogs. It bit me, little creature. I do think you're absolutely right. 6 is too many. It becomes a commercial enterprise when you get to those many, and it's professional dog walkers, and it's something like £8 an hour or whatever. I sympathise with them because they want to earn a living, but put your fees up to 10 quid and take less dogs. I think 6 is a lot. I agree.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Hi, Michelle. In Appendix B, we have the list of the open spaces. Is that a definitive list, or can we add on a space that's currently not there? At the corner of Brampton Road and Sandy Lane, we've got a new piece there, a new bit of green space where we've got trees, and the children from Maybank Infant School are about to plant an alpine meadow, flowers in that area. I think the postcode is something like ST50 Alpha Lima X or ST50 Alpha Romeo Alpha Lima. I just wondered if you could check to see if that open space can be added to the list. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. I will double check, make sure it isn't already on the list, but I'm presuming that you've already done that yourself. But yes, absolutely. We have an opportunity to add any missed locations that are not listed on Appendix B. So members are welcome to bring forward any specific locations that they wish to be included as part of this review.
Councillor Sweeney.
Thank you, Chairman. Michelle, on the list of areas on the back, some of it's highlighted in yellow. What's that signify? And secondly, what's LEAP and NEAP?
So the LEAP is it's coded in regards to the type of play area that's actually in that location. That's what it refers to. So the areas that are highlighted are from our landscape team in regards to the type of open space that they refer to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's worth noting as well that there's been an increase in dog ownership since this was last reviewed. During lockdown, there was certainly an increase in dog ownership. I think it's probably higher than ever. So now wouldn't be the time to certainly do nothing and let these to lapse. I think this is a reasonable set of proposals. I mean, keeping your dog on a lead, especially in play areas and in public parks, because even the most good-natured dog can be dangerous, as people should know. And certainly around dog fouling, I think this represents certainly a reasonable set of measures. I do agree with Councillor Williams about the 6 dogs might need to be reviewed, because I can't see how that people could control 6 dogs when I struggle to control 1 sometimes. But I certainly agree with this set of proposals, and I think it's reasonable and fair. Thank you.
Questions for Michelle? Councillor John Williams.
Thanks. On areas, just to make the point, I don't think we're pinky on this, but Wilmot Drive is in Crossheath Ward. And also, I can't see the whammy in here. I know it's a football field that's been leased to Newcastle Football Club. But I suppose what we're trying to do in consultation will concern the whammy as well. Or land that we have leased off to other companies or whatever. So are they mentioned? Michelle, are they mentioned? I can't see the whammy on here. But is it on? Where is it? I've got it. Thank you. Whammy pitch. We apologise, Michelle. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I've got it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No lower mile house, not Brits. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, John, are we done?
Good enough. Thank you.
Michelle, any comeback on that? IT issue. Michelle, are you there?
Jason, is this something you can pick up for instead of Michelle?
Yeah, I've just messaged this to see if she, because obviously it's clearly froze. So
yeah.
But yeah, the areas that have been mentioned, we can definitely look at adding. And like Michelle said, for the 6 dogs, that can be done through the consultation period as well. So are there any other questions that needed responded that Michelle hadn't?
on the consultation will be people, dog owners especially, about the restriction of letting their dogs off on a lead. I know a lot of people that do like take a ball and throw the balls, and the dog can get some relatively fair amount of exercise. I think that will also come into a disapproval with this consultation.
Yeah, like you said, we can add that to it and see what responses we get from it. But again, a lot of the times it's common sense from how people do things as well. But we can add it to the list and see what comes back from that.
Unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there that don't really care. They don't pick up after their dogs,
Yeah.
which is, you know, it tarnishes other dog owners. So would anybody else have any? Councillor Diamond, and I'll bring you in, John.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to bring up what you've just said, actually. I'm a volunteer at the Junior Park Run on a Sunday morning in Clough Park, and you would be astounded at how many people come into the park, because we don't have free run of the park, and let the dogs off on a lead on the football pitch, and they take them into the tennis courts and let them run there. There's a lot of them that really have got no brains, as far as I can see, when you've got 35 children running around a park and they've got a half a dozen dogs running around a park as well. So I would like to know what enforcement could be brought about if this happens, because I believe we've only got one dog warden. I don't know what, I mean, if this thing gets reported by councillors, what enforcement can be brought about to stop them from doing this? Thank you.
Can we answer that, Joe?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Thanks for the question. Yeah, there's two dog wardens that we have within the MMF team, but also within the scope of the MMF team, what we're actually doing is we're upskilling other parts of our team as well. So town rangers, like Kidsgrove rangers, things like that, we're going to be teaching them and training them up on the legislation that can be used for that. So we're not overly worried about the dog patrols. For the reporting side of it, we would want residents, anybody who's witnessed it, to fill the forms out online and obviously give as much detail as they can. Obviously, photographic evidence or video evidence is obviously preferred, but I completely appreciate that it's not always that easy to do it discreetly. If we're getting good descriptions of people, or if they're known within the neighbourhood, we can act upon that. We can visit them, and then we can give advice, because sometimes it's people just aren't aware of what's in place, so we can give advice when needed. If it is enforcement is needed, we can look at doing fixed penalty notices to them as well.
Councillor Wheeldon in, and then I'll come back to you on that one. Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you. I seem to have an awful lot to say tonight. It just occurs to me that whilst we're sort of taking care of limiting what dog owners can do and letting them off the lead and that sort of thing, and I take your point, because I live on a corner, and what people tend to do is to pick the dog poop up in one of the dog poop bags and then sling it over my fence. Why they collect it in the first place and sling it over, I don't know. But it just occurs to me when I've been to other places, so the beach, and I'll give you an example in North Wales, they have a beach where you can let your dog off the lead and let it run. Not everyone has a house with a garden. Some of them have flats. And if they've got a little creature that's helped them through tough times with COVID, they want to be able to let it have some freedom. It might be, as well as browbeating the dog owners and saying, don't let it off the lead and so on, to perhaps consider having a municipal owned dog park where for a fee you can actually let your dog off a lead in safety, where it's not anywhere near children, where if they attack another dog, then they're barred, a bit like footballers hitting each other, you know. Something like that would be a positive step whilst preventing the other. And it doesn't seem so draconian then. Just a thought.
And before I hand back over to yourselves, nice that Michelle's managed to rejoin us. Going on what Councillor Wheeldon just said about North Wales, they have in place a restriction from May the 1st until September the 30th, where no dogs are allowed on the beach at any time during that time. From 1st of October till the end of April, the dogs can go on the beach. it's something, like Councillor Wheeldon said, and, something like putting that in place, would that be something you consider? I was also at Breton Heath Park yesterday, and they clearly had a big sign saying that if you witness anybody letting their dogs foul and they're not cleaning up after them, ring this number, and it gave a direct number to the Cheshire East Council offices and the dog warden at Cheshire East Council. It's not something that I've noticed that we do ourselves. Would that be a consideration?
So just to answer that, and obviously, sorry, apologies, Jason, if you've already mentioned this already. We are looking, obviously, the enforcement of this activity will be undertaken by the mobile multifunction team. We're in a process of upskilling and cross-skilling some of our team members in order to allow them to do more enforcement around dog controls and around these provisions that we're exploring today. So in regards to restricting dogs or reviewing seasonally when they're allowed in locations, that is something we can look at, and I'm more than happy for members to, if you have particular locations that is of where you think that will be most suitable, then obviously these are proposals that we can consider at that point. In regards to the direct number for the wardens, we are currently in a process where with one council looking at our process and deliveries around improving the customer satisfaction and the customer journey in regards to all matters around environmental enforcement and community safety. So these are processes that we're trying to review. We want to make it easier for members of the public to report issues that they have directly to the Borough Council, so that we can add these and we can direct patrols accordingly in regards to this. And further, just going back to the last comment around having locations specifically where dogs are permitted to exercise. We do actually have a location which is at Bradwell Park at the moment, but Bradwell Lodge Park, which is hired out to a private company where they welcome dogs who are perhaps not trained adequately or not able to be kept under control by dog owners or in the process of training, and it is in these such like locations where members of the public are able to take their dogs to exercise freely with other dogs whilst they're in the process of being trained. So these are all opportunities that we'd certainly explore. And again, I'd welcome any feedback from members if there's any opportunities that we need to take forward.
Councillor John Williams.
Thanks, Chair. Well, I agree with that. Most of what's been said tonight at this meeting. We haven't got to show that we're against people with dogs putting too much enforcement, too many rules. The rules are there in a lot of cases to be broken. So it's not about responsible dog owners. It's about the people that don't, are not responsible and they're irresponsible, let the dogs off, has been mentioned tonight. So really, I think the majority of dog owners are quite good, really, looking after their dogs, and if they make a mess and picking it up and taking it, Councillor Wheeler said, not dumping it in trees and whatever, it's actually taking it home or putting it in the dog bin. So, I think we've got to make that point. We're against people who are irresponsible dog owners, irresponsible dog owners. Thank you.
Michelle?
Yep, I completely agree with that. And as part of the consultation process that we'll be looking to do for this, we will be interacting, on the ground with members of the public, people in the parks. We'll be doing regular patrols in the parks, encouraging dog owners to take part in the consultation while they're out, walking the dogs. So it'll be interesting to really see what sort of feedback we get in regards to this consultation. But Councillor Williams is right. These prohibitions, we are looking to target the irresponsible dog owners, and make them responsible dog owners. Our parks and open spaces are there for everybody to enjoy. So obviously we need to make sure that we're putting in measures to make sure that can happen.
I don't want to spend all day on this subject because it is a proof point as a dog owner myself, but I will refrain. Do any other members wish to raise any points with Michelle or Jason? We'll have Councillor Wheeldon and then we'll move to the recommendation.
I'm sorry about this, folks. This is my final thing. I've got a dog and she's gorgeous. We've got to be sort of balanced about this and not browbeat dog owners too much, because they're also want to have the joy and pleasure open spaces. So if we are going to restrict that, you've got to provide something else as an alternative outlet. I mean, Rupert said, you know, there's more dogs than ever now, and people have had them during COVID because they became companions. And it did keep people saying, our dog certainly kept me sane when we couldn't get out. But the thought of not being able to ever let her off the lead. We had a fabulous week at Llandudno, even though I came back with web feet, where we could actually take the dog and it was perfectly okay. If you went to West Shore, where everybody'd got a dog, very few. I know, but I'm just giving this an example where you could go to West Shore, let the dog off the lead, very few kids around there. We don't have that facility is what I'm trying to say here. We're restricting the dog owners on what they can do, but then we're not providing an alternative. And that I think that's quite harsh because I've got a dog.
Officers, anything further?
So what I'll say in regards to that, obviously the conditions that we are looking at, they are related to, so the different conditions relate to different parts of land, and you can find more information around, you know, the different pieces of land that we're looking at further on Appendix A. So in regards to that, the dog exclusions, for example, the dog exclusions are relating to, you know, fenced and enclosed children's play areas which are designated and marked for children's play, or fenced and enclosed games areas such as tennis and ball courts. The prohibition around maximum 6 dogs, this particular condition is looking at our country parks particularly, or our high profile parks, shall we say, where we tend to get this issue of professional dog walkers walking in excess of a number of dogs in those locations, and the dogs on leads. So that particular condition is around, you know, formal gardens, crematoriums, churchyards, marked out sports pitches. So what I would say in regards to that is, in regards to the parks and open spaces we have in the borough, there should be sufficient areas where dogs can be exercised, you know, off the leads, where dogs aren't excluded. And for example, the country parks are one of those particular locations. You know, we have quite a number of big country parks in our borough. We were very blessed with that. So there should be ample areas and sufficient areas where dog walkers, you know, responsible dog walkers are able to exercise their dogs in a safe manner.
Well, I noticed that members have their own personal preferences regarding this. So I'm going to ask the question now. Are members happy to approve the consultation to be started and then it comes back later in the year and towards the end of the year? Members agreed? Okay, I think that's all recommended. Thank you for that. We'll move on now to item number 11, which is disclosure of exempt information, which we don't have any this evening. So item 12 is urgent business. I've not been made aware of any urgent business. So all that's further to say is that the next meeting will be held on Tuesday, the 4th of July. And was that something? For the United States, not for us. So all that's left to say is have a good evening and safe journey home. Good night.